too loud? Is that, can you, yeah? Okay. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming this Sunday afternoon. There's lots happening here at the gallery today, as you can tell. First of all, I want to say that the RMG is proud to acknowledge the lands and people of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. We're situated on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas, a branch of the Greater Anishinaabe Nation, which includes Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. My name is Sonya Jones. I'm the Associate Curator and Curator of the Thomas Bouckley Collection. For those who aren't familiar with the Thomas Bouckley Collection, it's a collection that is of, there's 3,500 images of historical Oshawa. So this collection was amassed by a man named Thomas Bouckley. So he didn't take all the photographs, he kind of collected photographs from all various different sources. And there's 100 years, basically, of a visual history of Oshawa, and the gallery houses it here. So in the almost 10 years that I've been curating from this collection, I'm always looking for, new ways to recontextualize it and engage the community in different ways with it, more contemporary ways. And one such way is to have local contemporary artists respond to it in whatever way they want. So I first approached Grant Cole with this idea about almost 2 years ago, and I was so pleased when he was so interested in the project as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Grant Cole.
Hi. I'm Paul Williams, and I hope I speak as eloquently as you do. Thank you everybody for coming. It's a tremendous honor and pleasure to have done this, and it's been quite a learning curve and trip for me also. You learn a lot about yourself doing these kinds of things, and about your city, and certainly get a chance to refine my techniques. Thank you very much for coming today. Did you want to start with some questions?
Yeah. So we're going to keep things pretty informal, despite the microphone, obviously. I'm going to do a Q&A with Grant. But feel free, if you have any comments or questions throughout our discussion, feel free to speak up. I also know that we'll be here till 3, so if there's something we didn't cover or you don't want to speak up, then just come find us, and Grant will be happy to discuss his work with you. So, Grant. What was your first impression with the Thomas Bouckley collection?
I kind of was set back by it, actually, because I mentioned it in the video I did. I found it a little bit troubling in a lot of ways, and that there was so little spontaneity in the pictures. The pictures were obviously a record of things that happened in the city, but you immediately see past that and you see into the way things were. And that's what all I was looking at. I mean, there'd be a picture of a fire, and I'm not looking at the fire, there'd be a picture of a parade, I'm not looking at the parade, I'm looking at what people are wearing, how they're posed, where the camera is, how long the exposure had to be open for, and if there's anything coming towards the camera, how fast the guy to get it out of the way. And then you start looking, considering the carriage and what it meant and what it took for people to get into town every day, and how everyone was a little bit on display, because there was a lot of work in those days too, right? So I sort of went through the collection, and it got about, I looked at it, and then it troubled me, and then I come back to it, and it troubled me, and then I get through halfway through, and it stifled me, and then I arrived at this Parade of Life idea that I talked with you about. And I didn't want it to come across as being facetious or pessimistic about what it is to have pride and show successes. But have you heard of the term decorum? It's a great word, and we should have been using it a long time ago with this show. But decorum basically means a measure of politeness, or the way one carries themselves. Posture, poise, or propriety. And nothing was more apparent than that of this era, with the attire and the way people had to pose for a photo, largely because the shutter had to stay open for so long. But it was a big deal to have a picture taken, and it wasn't quite understood why a picture was being taken at the time. How could they have not thought, this is my time to be recorded and show all that there is about them. And that's fine, that's wonderful. People still do that today, which is a little more troubling. But you know, everyone has their own paths to enlightenment too, right? Sometimes you have to succeed, fail, be hurt, do things wrong before you arrive at what's right. And some success leads to failure and vice versa. So this is sort of an expression of the beat that we beat our drum to, the colors that we affiliate ourselves to, and the forms and shapes and products that we make and gravitate to and identify from. And the origin of pride. As from a personal perspective, the people's perspective, and the cities. So on the walls you'll see everything is extracted from photographs from the collection. They're not altered, but they are extracted. They're manipulated only for clarity. There's no recompositioning in the sense of collage. Although the only thing that can really change from the reduced image is the color, and sort of that variety in color shows the open-minded interpretations that we could still have a place upon these pictures. How much of our own parade is being put into the show while we look? How about that?
Okay, well, my next question is about process. So can you tell us a little bit about your process?
Yep. This is top secret, so all this will be a lie. But take the photographs and stare at them and find elements that catch me and reduce them, and using the computer, I basically make a high contrast image from them, and then I make a cuttable version so I can cut a stencil and mount that to the back of the plexiglass. I paint, remove the stencil. Now I've got a piece of plexiglass with a stencil, and then I paint a board, and I put the stencil over the painted board. And then sometimes I'll put a coat of epoxy over top, and the epoxy allows me to tint the whole front, so you can't really tell it's there. But tinting plexiglass, I've tried everything. I've tried soaking it, I've tried dyeing it, I've tried spraying it, I've tried misting it, and to create like a godlike, controllable tint is really hard to do. And I've found, right now anyway, a certain epoxy seems to work with me, even though it's not supposed to be placed on plexiglass. It seems to be working, and it's got that, I say godlike, because I want it to be, I want to remove myself from the work as much as possible. Almost like Pollock, he strived his whole life, he almost went crazy, how can I remove myself from this, and he just threw paint on it, and that was the art. I respect that, because I don't want it to be illustrative. I don't want it to be a photograph. I don't want it to be paint by number. I don't want it to be contrived brushstrokes. So it's entirely about process, you know. Yeah.
So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but you said you take certain details from the Bouckley Collection. So can you talk about what draws you to those particular details? You're taking, you know, one detail from a photograph and taking it out of its context, like historical context. So then what details, like how do you choose those details that you're focusing on? What makes you drawn to those particular details?
Well, this is where it gets really pretentious, right? But I'll you know, we arrive at sort of the feeling and reflections I have over the body of work, with the parade of life and the things I was talking about before. And some of the photographs exuded that very well. Others it's hidden. And other ones, like the drums were a source of an applied meaning. But the idea of the drums, in doing two of them, and that there's more than one, and that the most consistent thing you'll find in any collection, historical collection of cities in black and white, are these photographs of the bands, and most prominent in parades. And they're all about a cause, you know? And one day you're with one cause, and next day you're with another cause, and it's the same sort of thing with life. One day you're marching with a tune, and the next day it's a different tune. And that measure of happiness is impossible, you know? that measure of satisfaction, goal is always changing. But in the meantime, you're banging that drum. And that was the reasoning behind pulling that detail from that. And that drum is the same in every picture you see of a band. So that was the idea behind that one, for example. So some of these ideas are just were clear in some of the photographs, and other ones are more implied. The photograph of the house with the family out front. You got to remember this time and era too. I mean, equality between men and women wasn't there. Men definitely had an upper hand to a certain extent, and the will to have your picture taken with your family in front of a house. And, I mean, it meant a lot to them, and you can, that's what you see in the surface. But when you start looking at it, like, and where dad's sitting off to the side, and the wife's over there, and her head's cocked to the right, and they're wearing very ornate attire. It's hard to believe that they would wear that every day. But this is the kind of presence that they're trying to show. This is what they want to be remembered by. And once again, I'm only interested because I still see this happening today, and it hurts that it's still around. But it's not surprising. This is the way it was. So I took the one image of the girl. So it wasn't the husband, it wasn't the wife. I took the daughter, and she's standing there. She probably has been arguing about getting ready all day with her mom and dad, and she's got this outfit on. She looks really happy about it. And that was sort of, I had to do it. Where the flags, for instance, I saw all of these, the parade was sort of an opportunity where it was the one day you could misbehave, it was the one day you didn't have to show, it was like we're gonna close the streets, and the parade sort of always lended itself eventually to circus, whereas finally you were actually able to be expressive about life and put your tongue in your cheek, and you weren't being judged. And I think parade was that intermediary mark where it wasn't quite circus, and it was still you. So during those celebrations, it was always about flags. What those flags, like little symbols. It was like you hang everything you believe in above your head and sort of dance beneath. I just sort of separated everything else and just left those reasons to dance. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about your past and like what brought you to this point. So like you live in Oshawa, your practice is here in Oshawa. Can you tell us a little bit of like, how have you always created artwork? Like what's your, how did you get to this point?
I couldn't really help doing this because I work with vinyl, I do photography, I do graphics, illustration, and presentation, and branding. So refining ideas and having some kind of resolution to it is sort of my bag. So creating artwork is sort of, it's a compulsion. I haven't always done this method, but I used to teach. I've been teaching art my whole life, and life drawing, and School of Architecture, and I'm just like kind of guy to do this. If it wasn't hanging up here, it'd be, we'd still be making it and stuff, but it comes out of all the commercial skills that I've gained.
Okay, well I think that covers a lot of it. Like I mentioned, Grant and I will both be here till 3. If you have any further questions or comments or anything like that, Grant is around to answer them as well as myself. I mentioned that there's lots going on here at the gallery today. There's actually our artist in resident, Jeff Mann, has an artist talk as well as a participatory activity and refreshments downstairs as well. There's some delicious shortbread cookies here that you can help yourself to. But yeah, make sure you get downstairs and participate in the activity and hear Jeff Mann speak about his work that's in process downstairs. Anyway, Grant wants to say.
Thank you very, very, very much for coming, and I see a lot of friendly faces tonight, and it means a lot to me. Thank you, Tricia, for bringing the food. It's tremendous. Eat my shortbread. She's hiding. Make sure you grab some, take a card. She's awesome. Thank you very, very much for coming. Thank you.
Good job.